It has been a long, long time since I heard a Labour Party member say comrades, I can tell you. If Joanne Lamont and Miliband was here, they would have fainted a long time ago. We always started the meetings when I joined the Labour Party, comrade, chairman and comrades, and nobody fainted then. I was at a meeting in Rosyth a couple of weeks ago, and the chairman said this man has always fought for independence. I had to correct him, that's not true. In 1970, I fought a by-election in South Ayrshire as a Labour unionist. I'd been brought up in a British working class home, in a British trade union movement, and I believed it. Absolutely, firmly believed it, and I defeated the SNP candidate. I was actually known in Ayrshire as the Hammer of the Nationalists. And I went to Westminster, absolutely convinced that the UK was the right thing. I was down there for 2 years, and I began to wonder whether that place could actually deliver to the working class folk in Scotland that I represented. I began to understand that the United Kingdom is actually a fiction. It is, in fact, England with Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish appendages. I began to realise that when folk like me got up from Scotland and we were described by the other side as the Celtic French. Now, you can't have a united organisation if you designate some of the folk, on the fringe. And I came to a conclusion. I did a very unusual thing. I wrote myself a memorandum. Now, you might think, guys have his head right to himself. But I sat down and I argued with myself in writing this memorandum. And I had to come to the very painful conclusion that what I had said in the by-election in South Ayrshire in winning it wasn't true. That's quite a painful thing intellectually and emotionally. So I did what folk in my situation usually do. You look for the soft option. So I sort of sidled into devolution, because I thought, well, I'm still for a Scottish Parliament or Assembly within the United Kingdom. But a strange thing happened. Once you take the concrete of a unionist off your mind, you realise that you can think about other things than you have done previously. So you thought, oh, this is great. I can think different policies in devolution. And you start to develop them. And you think, I'm doing well. Then you come to a realisation. There's actually a glass ceiling in devolution. Devolution is limited power. Enoch Powell put it very well in the debates we had in the 1970s. He said that devolution is power retained at Westminster. They will set the terms of devolution and the height of the glass ceiling. And this is something that Scots have got to realise. Joanne Lamont, Ruth Davidson, and that fellow Wally Rennie all came together and said, we guarantee that as a prize for voting no, we guarantee more powers for Holyrood. They can't guarantee anything. Scots cannot deliver by themselves any more devolution. The sovereign parliament at Westminster, if we vote no, can decide whether we'll have any, and if we have any, how much we'll actually get. It's not for us. There's 5 million of us and 55 million south of the border. They will decide whether we get it or not. And bear in mind this, if we vote no and remain within the United Kingdom, and the folk who represent the northeast of England think that we're going to get too big an advantage in any more powers, they won't allow us to get them. Now, that's not just an idea of mine. I've been through this before. I went through it in 1979 for the Assembly referendum. And what happened then? The North East of England Labour MPs decided we weren't going to get it. And they got behind the 40% rule, which meant that everybody who was dead on the electoral register, any mistakes on the electoral register, counted for a no vote. So we couldn't get past the 40% threshold. And they were very, very happy. It didn't matter that the Labour government had given a pledge to us for assembly. They were determined we weren't getting it. That's something that Scots have actually got to realise. So I moved from devolution to independence. It was a 12-year journey, and it wasn't an easy one, emotionally, mentally, or intellectually, to leave the party that I was born in and finally end up in an entirely different position. And that's what I'm really asking lots of Scottish Labour voters to do in this referendum. I know how important loyalty is in the Labour movement, but at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, are we going to be more loyal to our children and our grandchildren than to a party which will tell us, vote no, and next year, when there's an election comes, vote Labour in Scotland, then get down on your knees and pray that they do the same south of the border, because if they don't, it's another 5 years of a Tory government. So it's the question of our people. I came out of retirement. Margot ordered me out of retirement for 3 purposes. One is to stir up the Scottish working class. Secondly, to tell the Scottish working class that you're not too wee and you're not too poor, that you are a talented people, you're an enormously talented people, but you've had latent power which you've never used. And what I'm trying to do is convince the Scottish working class to turn that latent power into positive power, to have a working class parliament with a majority and a working class government. I'm a member of the SNP, but I'm with Alan Croghan. If Alan Croghan succeeds in turning the Labour Party back into a socialist party, I'm voting Labour in 2016 and will be very happy to do so. The other thing is, and this will bring cheer to some folk, Tony Blair and company thought they had killed socialism. What's happening in this campaign is that socialism is being reborn as something highly relevant to the life of working people and their families. That book I've written, In Place of Fear 2, I chose the title because it was written by a hero of mine, an Iron Bevan. And an Iron Bevan said, the greatest armoury in a socialist weaponry is audacity. The audacity to think the way the establishment tell you you shouldn't think. And the audacity to do what the establishment tells you you can't do. Now we all think the National Health Service now, good thing. We may have our complaints about it, but it's a good thing. It didn't happen by accident. I watched a documentary 3 years ago on how the NHS came into being. And it ended with Nye Bevan addressing a huge meeting in the Methodist Hall in London. And he pointed out that every single part of the medical establishment, the Royal College of this, the Royal College of that, and the Royal College of the next thing, all that establishment were opposed to it. The economists were opposed to it. And Nye very, very fairly went through all the arguments. And he ended up by saying, now, these are the orthodox arguments. But I am an unorthodox minister in an unorthodox government, and the National Health Service is starting on the day I say it is. He had the audacity to do something they said shouldn't be done and couldn't be done. And we've got to apply that audacity when we come to policy in Scotland. The referendum is about power. That's what it's about. Power. What do you do with that power? On referendum day, we've got power. But you know, there's some folk who think we're not equipped to exercise power. This is what Joanne Lamont, who's the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland, said on Scottish television on the 25th of February. We're not genetically programmed in Scotland to make political decisions. Now, get that word genetically. That means that not only are we too small, we're too thick to run our own affairs. Well, I don't believe that at all. I believe we're a very talented people. I left your academy without a single certificate to my name. The rector brought me and Bobby Hislop, my pal, in and told us we'd make nothing of ourselves. He was a Tory snob. And if we had believed them, that we were too small, too poor, too stupid and no good, we would have made nothing of ourselves. Well, Bobby Hislop ended up as a major engineer running a big city, and for my life I ended up representing working class folk in Parliament. And if I can do it, working class folk everywhere else can actually do it. So it's a big And the power we are being offered now gives us options after we vote yes. The ballot paper asks a simple question: for or against an independent Scotland. It does not ask you to endorse Alex Salmond, the SNP and the White Paper. That's not on the ballot. If we are going to carry a yes vote, it won't be done by SNP members alone. It will be done principally. Who will take us over the threshold will be the traditional Labour voter in Scotland. So this isn't a victory. It's not an election, a victory for the SNP. It will be a victory for the people in Scotland. Now they're telling us we're better together. Better together. It's already been talked about, the food banks. This is a report in the Glasgow Evening Times on the 28th of June. A quote from Julie Webster, happy to be named, of the Maryhill Food Bank. I have worked in social work for 20 years, so I'm pretty hardened, but we had a family come in on Tuesday at 3 p.m, having not eaten since the previous Friday. There had been a problem with the benefits, and because it was a bank holiday weekend, the mother had no money for food and her 2 children. I watched the mum pick up and put down can after can, wondering what she was doing, before I realised she was looking for one with a ring pull, so that as soon as she got one, she could open it up and with her fingers start feeding her and her family. Is that better together? Is that what we've brought people to in our country? Scotland exports food and we've got folk who are starving at the present time. Now we can change that with the power that comes to us as a nation, as a working class with independence. And I'll give you examples. We've 157,000 families on the housing waiting list. How do you cure it? You can only do that with building houses. There isn't any other way to do it. And if we set out to build houses, the number required, somebody's got to quarry the sand, somebody's got to make the cement, somebody's got to manufacture the bricks, somebody's got to transport them to a site, and plumbers, slaters, jiners and brickies have got to build the houses. Now I can hear a Tory saying, socialist pie in the sky, who's going to pay for it? I'll tell you how you pay for it. You pay for it by remembering an Aaron Bevan's audacity. We at the moment are going to be spending somewhere in the region of £22 billion paying the PFI providers for our hospitals and our schools. In the city I live in Edinburgh, before they pay one nurse, they've got to pay £56 million to the PFI providers. Well, it's easy. If we've got a working class majority in Hollywood and a working class government, you bring them in and you say, gentlemen, we would like to renegotiate these commercial contracts. They're done every day in the week throughout commerce. And they're going to say no, because they're on a good thing. And you say to them, well, it doesn't matter whether you say no. We've got the legislative power and we've got the executive power, and whether you like it or not, we're taking 30 to 35% off what we pay you, and we're going to use that money to build the houses and create the jobs. You can do that. And I want to talk to you about the thing that makes Scots uncomfortable: oil. We've been in a prison of lies about oil since the day the first drop arrived on the mainland. Gavin McCrone was the economist of the Scottish office, wrote a secret memorandum saying Scotland would be enormously rich if we got our hands in this oil. So what did they do? They didn't put it into the Scottish account, they created a North Sea account, so that the fish that swim around in the North Sea and land at Aberdeen, it counts in our account. But the oil that comes up through the fish and lands in Scotland, it's in an entirely different account. And while they knew how important it was, they kept telling us, it'll go away, it's no the same, don't put your eggs in that basket. Janie Buchan, who was a great luminary of the Labour Party in my days, was on television, and she got rid of the oil issue by saying, it can't be Scotland's oil, because we didn't put it there. Now, I've worked in the Arab world, and I've told my Arab friends, and they say to me, we didn't put it there either, by Jenny. There are 40 million tonnes of oil extracted from the North Sea. There's 21 billion barrels left. Now think about this. That amount of oil for 5 million people is far more valuable for them than that amount of oil shared by 60 million people as we are inside the United Kingdom at the moment. Suppose tonight, to give you an analogy, you and I win the lottery. It's about 2 million. I checked before I came. But I've got one ticket, and you're all in a syndicate, and you've the other ticket. I have $1 million, and you've $1 million. Who's better off? Me than you. And it's the same with the oil. Now, the usual arguments about oil in Scotland are about the taxation. I want you to think about what we can actually do with the black stuff. Because in my book, I argue for a Scottish National Oil Corporation, where we are engaged in running the oil industry as well as other folk. Think of what we can do with a tiny proportion of that 40 million tonnes. All we use for our petrol and diesel in Scotland a year is 10,241 tonnes. That is 0.02% of the 40 million tonnes. We take that and we reduce the price of petrol and diesel and jet fuel. And we're not taking a great deal of oil to do that. But you put more money into folks' pockets locally. You transform the fuel economy of our whole transportation system, whether it be trains or whether it be trucks. Make them 10 times more efficient. And in the tourist industry, where we get a lot of tourists from the northeast of England, they hardly go beyond the line Glasgow to Edinburgh because of the cost of going up into the Long Highlands. Think what the position is. Well, you just start to stimulate the economy. More money locally to be spent, you've got a better transport industry, and you've got jobs created in the tourist industry by just a tiny use of a tiny proportion of that resource. There's another thing that folk don't know. There's 570 oil rigs in the North Sea. It's not a puddle, it's a huge oil field. A number of them are becoming technologically redundant. They'll have to be decommissioned. That's skilled, scientific, as well as semi-skilled work. If we're not independent, we'll get none of it. If we have an independent working class government, we tell the oil companies, you're under our jurisdiction, you will help build up our capacity to decommission them, and they'll be decommissioned in the Highlands, in Rosyth, and in the Clyde. £10.5 billion worth of work is involved in decommissioning. Then there's the Clyde. There's been oil and gas in the Clyde since they first discovered oil in the North Sea. But they suppressed that knowledge. Because if you put oil rigs down in the Firth of Clyde, Trident cannot sail safely past the Isles of Clay. Michael Heseltine in the Sunday Post on Sunday, he admits it. He was the Minister of Defence. And he said, for strategic reasons, it has to be, Trident first, and never mind the oil, keep it plugged. Why, if we're better together, why couldn't they shift the location of Trident, say, down to Portsmouth, and allowed us to develop the Clyde? Now just think about this. North Ayrshire is a disaster area for unemployment and poverty. In Clydeside, we're always worried about work. If we began to exploit the oil and gas in the Clyde, you begin to transform the economy of North Ayrshire and Clydeside. You've got to build supply vessels and oil rigs and all the technology that goes along with it. And they have stopped us getting that benefit, despite knowing that that particular resource was there. And I said to you, the referendum's about power. When we've got the power, Trident will go and we'll exploit the oil and gas and we'll create the jobs for our people. I want to finish with 2 points. All of my life and before my life, the Scottish working class have always been in a defensive posture. If you think back to the First World War, in the 1915 rent strikes by the women in Glasgow, they were defending their families' living standards. If you think in my generation, we were always defending ourselves against closure, rising unemployment. Now, I've been on marches all over the place. Johnny Walker's factory closes in Kilmarnock. It's a disaster for the community. We had to defend ourselves against the poll tax, defend ourselves against the bedroom tax. Think of the energy we've had to use generation after generation to defend ourselves against policies we would never have inflicted upon ourselves. Think of this. When we are independent, we don't need to defend any longer. Nobody's going to visit policies on us we don't want. All that wonderful energy that we have now will be used for the positive purpose of rebuilding a better society than the one we've got at the present time. The final remark is this. On the 18th of September, between 7 AM and 10 PM, 15 hours, we are a sovereign people. We have power. Nobody can take it away from us. For the first time ever, we are sovereign. What happens at 1 minute past 10 is vital. If we voted no, we've thrown that power away. And we're back in our children and our grandchildren. Back into a country of low wages, high unemployment, gross inequality and poverty for our children. If we voted yes, every working class person can stand up that night and say to their partner, their wife and their wames and their grandwames, at long, long, long last, our time has come.